Alright, so CTR, the best video game forever on PlayStation. Everyone is excited about the remake, and I am too. Nitro Fueled will be released in June, and it's gonna be huge! However, I see a lot of misconceptions about the game. I mean, it's not surprising, the game is very complex, trust me, and most of the people have never seen the competitive side of the game. I'll try to explain in a simple way the main techniques about this game, and you may have already heard about things like Sapphire, USF or Sacred Fire. This video is not going to be extremely in-depth, but I already have other videos which I'm working on and they are divided in parts because there is a lot to talk about, so take this one as a general introduction. So, you may have heard the famous line "Pentapenguin is slow" in the American version, which is NTSC-U by the way, which is true. So let me cover first the big differences between the official versions. NTSC-U, the first released version, where Penta is slow and has the same stats as Polar, Pura and Ripperoo. But you also have Dingodile, Tiny, Papu Papu and Entropy that have max speed in all versions. So you can easily use those in NTSC-U. And that is the reason also why, in the first tracks especially, you see often Dingodile used, because pentaturning is really bad in competitive for the first tracks. Now, we have the PAL, the European version, and NTSC-J, the Japanese version, where Penta has max speed, like Dingodile, and max turn, like Polar. I won't thought deeply about acceleration in this video, cause it's pretty useless and it can be ignored here. Acceleration is useful when you need to start driving when your speed is 0, to get your car going, like when moving through the hubs in speedruns. But not for races, since you get the initial turbo from the start line. But even in speedruns, it's really not that much of a deal, so... Another thing I have to mention is that Ripperoo and the other unlockable characters are not in any way faster or better than the normal characters. They are just an addition to the roster. There are only 4 models of the cars as we know it, excluding Pentas. We have the beginner, the 2 intermediate and the advanced ones. I'll leave in the video the different speeds of the kart, so you can have a better idea on it. Now, about the detailed videos I'm working on, they show the RAM addresses and the inside maths of the game, so you will be able to check for yourself and replicate easy to understand the game better. But for now, take this for granted and yeah, let's keep going. And before talking about Nitro Fueled, we need to speak the same language, so let's start. To understand the basic techniques in CTR, you have to push triangle to switch from the minimap to the speedometer located in the bottom right corner. Most of the people give it for granted, but it's really important in reality. Now, you will see on the speedometer that you have 2 different kind of turbos you can gain, which are the turbometer and the jumpometer. The most used type of turbo is achieved through power sliding, so to end the easy part, and as most of you might know, to initiate a power slide, you need to press R1 or L1 and a left or right on the D-pad to slide in the direction you choose. This is where real CTR begins. You can perform 3 turbos per power slide and you have to fill the turbometer as much as possible, every frame counts. And this is also why most of the people can't do long-lasting turbos or even Sapphire. You have to fill the gauge bar. Now, follow me here because this is really important. CTR uses a reserve system to store the turbos you do. Each turbo fills your reserves, which is a stored value not visible to the player. But only full turbos will add enough reserves to maintain your boost. Doing full turbos is potentially the most important part of being competitive at this game. Now that I covered the reserves, we can get to the next part. Learning how the speed works. So, doing 3 full turbos in 1 power slide will put your speedometer pointing straight up. This is called yellow fire, and you will see a certain height of the flames behind your kart. By doing only full turbos or getting hang time turbos, less than 150, this is the highest speed in the game you can achieve. So, we are getting there. The next stage of speed is called Sacred Fire. To get and maintain Sacred Fire, you must drive over a turbopad and maintain some reserves, which is crucial. You may even notice bigger flames behind the cart. Last thing about Sacred Fire is that you can get it with a jump of 150 or more. The last and highest speed, based on turbos and reserves, is Ultimate Sacred Fire, or USF. Similarly to Sacred Fire, Ultimate Sacred Fire can only be achieved on certain boost pads called Super Turbo Pads. The easiest way to get USF is to play Turbo Track. Every turbo pad in this track is a Super Turbo Pad. So to get USF you have to drive on these turbo pads and maintain reserves, otherwise your turbo, your USF will go down easily as soon as your reserves hit zero. Now the tricky thing about USF is that you're not allowed to get any other kind of turbo, otherwise you are losing the speed, the USF. So no turbos from jumping, no turbos from power sliding, and no turbos from other turbo pads that are not super turbo pads. I hope this was really clear, because every time I see a video of CTR and there is USF, there is always the comment that you are cheating or how do you maintain that speed. Now, notice this. USF is the same for every character. Crash in USF is the same as Penta in USF. And also, USF is the same for every version of the game. There is no little difference. So again, bringing Hot Air Skyway to the topic, that is also why the lap of 23 of Hot Air Skyway is a full USF lap. And you often see Polar playing this lap, because it's useless to use Penta, since you are with USF and you have the max speed in the game. Now, except Turbo Track, the other tracks have a few turbo pads that can give USF, as you can see for Haas, for Oxide, for Cortex. But now, the last thing to understand about speed is Sapphire, and probably the most famous technique of CTR. So, as you remember, earlier I talked about reserves. Sapphire is based off reserves. The idea is to get your reserves as high as possible, which means doing as many full turbos as possible. So after doing many full turbos, you will notice the fire behind the cart will disappear, but you will not lose any speed. This means that your reserves has gone as high as possible and you actually have infinite reserves. Now be careful here, because to maintain Sapphire you must not do many more boosts of any kind, mini turbos, jumps, driving over pads. This is because your reserve value has actually overflowed, and if it goes above zero you will no longer have Sapphire. Once you have Sapphire, you are pretty much done, because your speed will actually be locked. So if you drive over a turbo pad with Sapphire, you will always have Sacred Fire. This also applies to USF, but remember, you must not do any type of boost, otherwise you will lose USF. Now, another thing I always see people confused about, and they think that it's cheating, is the speed ghost. So, it's a technique to go fast, but it's not related to reserves. An easy way to get a speed ghost is to drive down a large hill, and you will notice the speedometer is maxed regardless of if you have reserves. The idea of the speed ghost is to maintain this speed from the downhill, and the way you do this is by jumping repeatedly with R1 or L1. Now again, the speed ghost is not related to USF, Sacred Fire or reserves in general, or turbo pads even. The speed ghost is just a good representation of the physics of the game, because it's logical to think that if you go down a downhill, your speed increases. So as I was saying, once you are down a downhill, you jump repeatedly with R1 and L1. And this technique has been named Froggy by the community over the years. There are many different ways to get many different type of speed ghosts. One that is famous is the one on Sever Speedway. You can also do mini turbos in the air called mid-air. You can do this easily by pressing R1 or L1 multiple times and then holding it on the last press and starting a power slide. This can be useful to do after a froggy and it's really easy, to be honest. And finally, to close this topic, the last major technique, which is U-turning. So to U-turn, you have to just press while driving square, down and left or right at the same time. You will notice a very sharp turn that it's much tighter than only holding square or turning normally. And that's it. Finally, I explained everything, and now I can talk about what I think should be kept in Nitro Fueled and what not. Now about Nitro Fueled, I don't know, because we should talk about what was intended in the first place on CTR. USF pads, for example, were intended. They were meant the cart to surpass big gaps, alright? It's fair that you have the skill to get a lot of reserves, to maintain USF, to control USF, because it's really fast. The cart goes so fast, it's hard to control and not hit walls, right? Sacred Fire were intended, even the other kinds of speed. Speed ghosts were, as I already said, a good representation of the physics of the game. It's realistic to think that if you go down a downhill, your speed increases. It's logical, alright? I agree, on the other hand, that speed ghosts that are glitchy, where you can get them on the walls, on the corners, should be removed. Sometimes they are cool to learn and to do on the original CTR, like the ones on Sever Speedway. I can agree, and I can see a game where those things are removed, right? Sapphire is... I'm not even sure it's a bug, you know, because the overflowing, I mean, I'm sure they were aware of that. Maybe they kept it as an Easter egg. I wouldn't put my hand on the fire to say that it was a bug and it should be removed. It's still funny, it's not even hard, extremely hard to do it. And it's fair that if you are good at doing full turbos, you get the reward of having an infinite turbo, an infinite reserves, alright? About shortcuts. Jesus. On my shortcut video, I saw a lot of comments that I disagree with, I'll be honest. Maybe I'll go against the grain, but you have to understand that if you're not able to do a shortcut, it doesn't mean that the shortcut itself have to be removed, alright? Like, I'm not talking about the Papus Pyramid 4 seconds shortcut again. If you don't have the control of the cart, if you're not good to take trajectories, to do full turbos, to know how the game works, you can't say, no, those shortcuts should be removed. Like, even if they were not intended. The ones where you still play most of the track, they add competitivity to the game. They add different paths you can take. They make the game in any way more skilled to play. I mean, the game itself, I'm not even sure how it will work. I mean, can you imagine 8 players, because there will be 8 players this time, not 4, taking masks and clocks, because after the second place everyone is getting an item to become first? Like, it's a lot of RNG. I can't imagine 7 people behind of me if I'm first, getting stupid items to surpass me. You know, that I can't do anything against that. So you have to think to even that. But overall, I'm still waiting for gameplay videos to be released, so maybe it's still early to give a serious opinion. I hope that Binox will do a great job. I'm afraid that some stuff will be killed, or maybe I will still play the original CTR, I don't know. I hope that a good job will be done, and yeah, that's it. Thanks for staying with me this late, and see you next time.